The more changes, the more stays the same. The dye is faded enough that now it lines in more with pink. But I've come a long way since my first video in charge. I mean, think only a year ago, I was talking through a vent to a boy in a closet. There's gotta be a better way to word that. Oh, would you look at that? It's the January skeleton. You know what that means. I don't know what that means. I didn't want to be back here doing this again, but it seems Hollywood hasn't learned its lesson. And by that, I mean, truth be told, I really just needed a filler video while I spend most of my time doing my research on the much bigger one for next month. The last time you saw this demeanor in this month with that skeleton, you heard from a very bald man who had several questions about Hollywood's aversion to marketing movie musicals as such. That video was primarily about Wonka and Mean Girls and The Color Purple, movies that had come out in 2023 and early 2024. And now we stand here, beginning of 2025, not much has changed, except for Wonka 2 getting announced. And they made a Beetlejuice sequel. It's not related to the musical at all, I just really wanted to bring it up. Speaking of Warner Brothers characters with face paint and green hair and a kooky demeanor, Harold and the Purple Crayon. The main topic I covered last time was the film adaptation of the musical adaptation of the movie Mean Girls. A movie based on an already existing property that had been a popular musical for years, but somehow still led people to believe it was a new remake or sequel. Like, I had a family member ask me what I thought about Wicked before going into it, and they said, I don't know, it looks weird. I love the original Wizard of Oz. Like, I know I'm a theater kid, but how do you not know about Wicked? All because it didn't win the Tony? So no, I'm not going to imply that this movie wasn't marketed as a musical. I don't think it was per se, but you have to be really disconnected not to know. I mean, even if you don't know what Wicked is, Ariana Grande hasn't acted in a movie since forever. Her film credits are Don't Look Up and Men in Black International. In Don't Look Up, she just plays a version of Ariana Grande. And Men in Black International is a movie I have a vendetta against because it came out when I worked in a movie theater and they made us wear demeaning alien ears and I was already at my lowest, so I was not happy. But her most famous role, aside from singing and acting in her music videos, was her stint in the Nickelodeon verse. She was on that one show with the April Fool's episode that I really like. I think it's like the best episode of the show. She played Dorothy. Wait a minute. So, we need to have a conversation about this. When the Dear Evan Hansen film adaptation came out, the biggest complaint above all else was the casting. Ben Platt was too old and kind of inexperienced in film acting to be the lead in this picture, but his daddy produced the movie. So on one hand, he may have taken the role away from someone more deserving. On the other, it wouldn't have gotten made if he didn't want to do it. Wicked has been an incredibly popular stage musical since the early 2000s, and it took over 20 years to get a big screen adaptation. Could it have something to do with the source material or the fact that Disney was trying to build a universe set in Oz with a film directed by Sam Raimi? Anyway, for whatever reason, nobody wanted to make this movie, and the people that did every time would be stuck in development hell. Until one Ariana. Now, this was not a spur of the moment thing. Ever since she got famous, she said it was her mission to be a part of a Wicked film. She would say it to everyone who would listen. She is most definitely the reason this movie got made, and I'm not even saying she didn't deserve the role, because she does a really good job. I forget how good of an actress she is when she's not being forced to wear a red wig. I don't think she in any way rode her way to the top unfairly. Maybe her current boyfriend, but he sings like one time, and I know he's done other stuff, but there's one specific line where he really sounds like SpongeBob. Because you are so beautiful. If you don't know the plot of Wicked, the Wicked Witch of the West is born green because her mother cheats on her husband. Can't believe this whole story started with infidelity. The plot of the movie, not... well, you know. Anyway, I'm not going to say that the marketing material lied about this being a musical, but they did purposely leave out the fact that this is a part 1 of 2. Of course, I knew this because I'm annoying and follow the development of major motion pictures, but most of the public didn't. I got to see my friend's face as he reacted to the To Be Continued in both Wicked and Spider-Verse. That rules. But at least the title card for Wicked reads Wicked Part 1. By the way, I saw people who aren't familiar with movie theater etiquette posting the pictures they took of the title card, and then I saw people defending them saying it just just the opening. It's not like they filmed the whole time. But then I try to do the same, probably because of the meme. And they dropped the title like 10 to 15 minutes into this movie. Speaking of time, this picture is 2 hours and 40 minutes, rounding up to 3 hours. And again, Wicked Part 1. And I went into this movie relatively blind. I know. Shocking, but I've never actually seen Wicked in full. But I've been surrounded by theater kids most of my life, so obviously I've heard Popular and Defying Gravity, and because of that, I got to be aware of when the songs were being incorporated and reincorporated early on. And I wanted, when I heard them perform it for the first time, to be as locked in as possible, and I didn't want any spoilers for a musical that's been out for 21 years. But at the scene at the dance with the hat, our showing got so quiet that we could hear a different showing about an hour ahead blasting Defying Gravity. I legitimately covered my ears. So I've only heard, when it came to the actual original Broadway musical, only the cast recordings. So I don't know if this happens in the live show or not, but there's a lot of bits shoved into the middle of these songs. Like, Popular starts, it halts halfway through, a scene happens, and then the rest of the song just picks up again. I thought they had just had a shorter version for this. I was surprised when they started playing it again. And it's really bad in Defying Gravity. There's like 4 breaks in that song alone. It is sweet that they give parts to Idina and Kristen from the original cast. I have no doubt in my mind that at the very least the cast are very big fans of the stage production. So most of my thoughts when I'm talking here, this is really just, it's no longer about marketing. It's just an excuse for me to talk about modern movie musicals. I've done my best to discuss the parts that likely could only be done through film or are likely changes. Because musicals are long, but part 1, 3 hours. So they had Ariana and all of her stan support, as well as musical kids nostalgia, and people who love the original film. Because this movie attempts to be 3 different things: an adaptation of the stage musical, a prequel to the 1930s film, and an adaptation of the book. I mentioned the book specifically because the slippers in this version are not ruby. That was a specific MGM change. But I'm pretty sure I've learned some stuff since. I think in the musical they become red when they're enchanted with magic. That might happen, it might not. Does this matter at all? Not really, but it's seemingly the only change made to reference the original source material, when the rest of the film seems to want to remind you of the movie, like the musical does. Like, I imagine the bike sequence with the lion cub, while that scene may be present in the stage version, in Wicked Part 1, it's purposefully shot like The Wizard of Oz. So most of the things I could say or talk about are things that were clearly decisions made that could only fit a movie and were made to make you think of the 30s film. Because obviously the Broadway version is far superior, but it can't replicate shots, like with a camera. And there's even some shots that are far too meticulous and small to be present on stage anyway. Like the part where there's light seeping through a hole in the door frame and forms a halo above Galinda's head as she's pretending to be charitable. The shadow puppets as the animals are meeting in the Something Bad song. It could be done on stage, but not exactly the way this one is shot. I guess let's talk about the animals. Okay, so the sharpest complaint when comparing Wicked 2024 to the stage and the 30s film is, instead of putting people in animal costumes, they utilize computer-generated effects. And again, this is more in line with the book. The lion is supposed to walk on all 4s. I agree that for the animals to work in the story, they have to read as animals, but you know me. You know I love puppets and animatronics. It could have been done, but if I go down that path, I'm gonna talk about Return to Oz for too long, and I don't think you guys are ready for that. A lot like the plot of this movie, of this story, sometimes you just need a main antagonist to point fingers at. And I used to hate CG way more. That was like my red herring. But now that AI is a big thing, I can tolerate computer effects as long as a human actually made them. And there are sets that look really good. The library and Emerald City really come to mind. But I don't know. So when we are reviewing film, we want to remove every possible piece of human error. We want to be objective machines, but that is honestly unsustainable. So maybe I need to get my eyes checked, or maybe I sat too far away from the screen, but this hasn't been an issue before, and I don't know. This movie just kind of looks blurry. Like, I don't know if it's the muted colors or the backlighting, but some of this movie was legitimately hard to see and at times hard to look at. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'll go get my eyes checked and come back to say, yep, there was a gas leak in my room. I don't know what I was talking about. Hey guys, it's me, beloved character editor Andrew. I just got some good news from the eye doctor. My prescription definitely changed. I needed new glasses, and now I have new glasses. I don't think that negates my point, per se. But it does look sort of bad. Like if one of the three purposes of this movie is to make a prequel to the original Wizard of Oz, the 30s film is one of the most colorful films in popular culture. People still watch it. I watched it as a kid, even though that poor munchkin hung himself. I don't need to defend this movie. Stans are already doing that, and it's getting nominated for awards and making a bajillion dollars. Hopefully we get more movie musicals. I'm just saying things are looking up. Next time you see me next January, if I even do this again, we may be on the up and up. I saw some people jumping off of the flat colors to say that the blocking is also bland and uninspired, which, come on. Like, even if the choreography is copied exactly from the stage, which I know it isn't, I still think that aspect is really well done. Not even just the opening sequence, and they did a fantastic job at making the himbo act as slutty as possible. He's putting people's legs around him and his hands around their throats and shit. What is your problem? Have some decorum. I am watching in the audience, and there's people around. I love the wizard sequence with the giant head. I thought it was CG at first, but no, it just looks like that. They actually really, it's like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. They made these sets, they just re-edited after to make it look more computer generated. I think the casting of Jeff Goldblum is genius in general. I don't know if he knows anything about Wicked, but I'm certain he's seen the 30s film, and because of that, he has a lot of fun with the character he's given. I want you to know I wrote this joke after I saw the movie in November. I've been sitting on this for a while. I know people have since made the joke, so I'm not new to this, but the first thing I thought, I really love that he hands Elphaba a tiny version of him, like Smiling Friends. I already talked about Ariana and Ethan and that man whore, and I guess now Jeff. I also think it's really funny that none of the main characters wear the school uniform. Like, they all have iconic designs. I think it's cute. You could complain about that, but I don't know, man. You might just not like movies. Wait until CinemaSins takes a crack at this for being inaccurate and having too many songs. I always love some Michelle Yeoh. She isn't a bad singer. She just doesn't really go full throttle, and I guess, like, that character just doesn't have a lot of songs. And when you adapt to the screen, that tends to happen. Talking takes over when the camera's in your face. Where's that Hugh Jackman clip?
Okay, so that's, if you were singing it literally, it'd be like that. I can go out there and some takes, I'd be like, what have I done? Sweet Jesus, what have I done?
Man, they didn't sing one time in Deadpool. No one mourns the wicked! And honestly, they didn't show a lot of Elphaba's training at all. I know it probably isn't present in the musical, but this is a 3-hour Act 1. I think you could fit that in there somewhere. What are we doing? Which leads us to the casting of the lead. Elphaba, the Wicked Witch, played by Cynthia Erivo. I'm not gonna pretend like I've been a huge fan of hers the whole time, as this is actually the first movie I've seen her in. Except for Pinocchio 2022. But she's much better in this by a wide margin. This is also the second video in a row where I've referenced Pinocchio 2022. And I think the third video overall, I don't know anything about her. I don't know why people are mad at her. But honestly, if Ariana meddling is what it takes to get Broadway actors and actresses in a musical movie, then so be it. Film acting and stage acting are very different and don't always translate to each other. See previously Dear Evan Hansen. But she has no problem whatsoever. She manages to toe the line of bombastic stage acting and subtle camera work. What I wanted to talk about in her casting is the topic at hand that if this was like a Star Wars movie, it would get cast with the Scarlet W for woke. No one mourns the woked. But none of those chuds care about musicals because they have no taste. We'll get back to that. My point would be really well made in this video if I have not since seen the Ben Shapiro Wicked review, where he actually has a lot to say and truly cares about the source material. It's a shame he had to become a grifter because he clearly just wants to talk about musical theater. But Elphaba is played by a woman of color, black woman in this movie, and normally I wouldn't bring that up at all because I don't think it actually makes a difference. Like, I saw the live action Little Mermaid in theaters, and it was cool to see all those little black girls and their moms in the audience seeing themselves on the big screen. It's important, but it doesn't change the innate quality of the movie. I still didn't love that movie. I'm not saying representation isn't important, but I think actors should be judged by their quality of work and not whether or not they are participating in any proper representation. That being said, Elphaba is an outcast, very literally bullied and degraded for the color of her skin. It's a no-brainer. Why hasn't she been played by a woman of color this whole time? I think this is the only casting choice that adds a layer of depth to an already existing character. I think it was a great decision if made purposefully. It's also, again, this does not affect the movie, but I think it's really cool that for the characters, the disabled characters in the film, they casted people in actual wheelchairs, which the stage version didn't. I don't know if it's the Broadway musical or just one of the runs of it. Elphaba's sister, Nessa, who is in the chair, is played by Dee Dee Mango Hall, and they have done everything in their power to endear these characters to the audience that is now expecting a franchise. So you've had this film in development for decades, go from studio to studio, you finally got it to work, and you have a major pop star attached to the project. But you're a modern studio, so why would you want to make only one solid movie when you could make a universe? The picture ends with Elphaba belting out Defying Gravity, and To Be Continued rises onto screen, where the intermission would normally take place on the stage. And I, having now seen it, don't actually hate it. Like, going into this, beyond the color grading that I couldn't even begin to explain, that is far above my pay grade. My biggest complaint would have been the fact that they split this film into 2 parts. From what I've heard, Act 2 isn't as good as Act 1, at least when it comes to the quality of songs, but honestly, as long as I get to hear No Good Deed, I'm okay. Also, I'm pretty sure the entire Wizard of Oz movie takes place within Act 2, so what they could do is just remake the 30s movie. They're definitely going to do that. But the way this movie ends really got me excited for part 2. And as long as they don't pull a Spider-Verse, and it does in fact come out in 2025. It's ironic I say that because I don't even think Spider-Verse is coming out in 2025. As a musical, I hate to say it, but splitting the movie into parts is the best way to replicate the feeling of an intermission. I feel like this discussion comes up every year by this point. If movies are getting longer and longer, why don't we have intermissions? Well, I could tell you, as someone who worked at a movie theater, that shit would cause so much havoc and clutter. Because when you're going to a live show, there's only one musical happening. Everyone is taking intermission at the same time. But for a movie, there could be people in line for snacks or tickets before their movie, and now there's like 20 people, maybe at minimum, leaving a theater and just hanging out in the concessions area. There's not a lot of places in a movie theater to hang out. I hate to sound like a suit here, but loitering would skyrocket because it's not like you can leave the movie theater. The intermission could only be like 20 minutes. These were made together, a lot like Dune. But I have the same relationship with Dune, or the same effect after seeing the movie. I really am excited to see what happens next, and because I'm now fixated on it, want to consume more content, but it's an adaptation, and I don't want to spoil myself. I remember people saying, hey, if you can't wait for Doom Messiah, you should read the Dune books. Like, huh? I don't want to know what happens. Like, I know that's absurd since the source material has been around for decades, but I made it this far, didn't I? I have gone on record saying that Dune Part 1, while it looks gorgeous, doesn't really stand on its own. But a movie like Spider-Verse, and yes, now Wicked Part 1, does. Remember before, when I mentioned those internet crusaders who hate musicals and love their beautiful incel gods? I feel like I might need to walk on eggshells here because, again, like Mean Girls 2024, it seems the current meta for these movie musicals is to hire a current popular artist with a lot of dedicated fans, scratch that, stans. But with Renee Rapp, relatively new to popular culture, you don't need to tell me, oh, actually, I've been listening to her since 2022. That's not what I'm talking about, and you know it. But Renee Rapp fans are chill. I would argue that the Mean Girls 2024 movie was made as a vehicle for her and made for her fans. Ariana stans are a different breed. How have we gotten to a point on the internet that I can't discuss a film without risk of Twitter stans finding my mother's maiden name? And honestly, she does a great job. Maybe. I haven't seen the original, but honestly, I just wanted to make jokes. I am nothing but an entertainer. And the thing is, I don't even think casting a pop star is a bad idea. It can be, like whenever Taylor Swift is in anything. But Renee has TV acting experience, and Ariana has stage acting experience. I know she was also on TV, but a Max exclusive and a Dan Schneider show are not comparative. Very rarely do you find that perfect mix of Oscar-worthy acting ability and genuine musical talent, all while appealing to their respective fan bases. The stans came out in droves for Mean Girls 2024 and Wicked, so I have to ask, where the fuck did all the little monsters go? I was actually very excited for this picture. Well, actually, I was dreading it. Then I was excited again. Then I was dreading it. And then I was excited again. A spectrum of it's so over to we're so back. Joker 2019 was a lot of things. And by that, I mean it was just a bunch of different movies the director, like, bunched together. But for the most part, it was a fun enough movie. I really truly believe the picture was way more subtle before DC got cold feet and edited it to bash you over the head. And despite all of that, there are still a ton of different interpretations. Joker 2019 sort of got co-opted as an incel movie when there's really nothing in that movie that is overtly, why do they never go for the nice guy, you know? It's weirdly enough kind of a class consciousness movie, but regardless, the film did really well, but garnered the wrong audience. Whether that be that incels attached themselves to this interpretation of the character, or news outlets did it for them. Either way, I don't believe that was the intent. I imagine Todd Phillips was upset by this, so he made it his goal to reject that fantasy. Thus, Joker Folie Deux. And when I first heard they were making a Joker 2, I rolled my eyes. Then when I heard that they were making it a musical, I got the most excited I'd ever been for a DC movie. And then they announced it would be a jukebox musical. And then they were really secretive about it. When asked whether or not this film was a musical, the director kept saying lines like, well, the characters sing in this movie when they feel a swell of emotions that words wouldn't be enough to communicate. So, a musical. And then it came out. We were very busy in October for reasons and did not end up seeing any movies in the theater that month. So this film, unlike Wicked, I actually could not go in blind. I could not have my opinion untainted by the outside world. I had heard too much. I heard it was awful. I heard it was boring. It was dumb. It was ugly. But what I didn't hear is the one thing I wanted to know is whether it was a musical or not. And then I told the public that I was going to be covering this movie and what has become a yearly tradition of talking about modern movie musicals from the time prior. And I got a lot of people, I guess, excited, saying, oh brother, this movie, I can't wait to see you tear this apart. So then I finally sat down to watch Joker 2, and I fucking love this movie. I love the musical numbers. I love how it's a love letter to specifically movie musicals, not just stage ones. The way it utilizes a Technicolor chic and features songs from that era of film. I love the sets they use for these musical numbers, and I normally hate the drab, yucky gray these serious movies always use. Like, if you don't like the script or the performances, that's one thing, but there are so many sequences in this film that are legitimately beautiful, specifically the dream sequences, and even more specifically the rooftop moonrise scene. Not only does Joaquin do a fantastic job as both of the characters he's playing, that he could slip in and out of with ease so seamlessly, but still leave you questioning. He also sounds good while singing, which I'll be honest, I did not think he would. I saw some people saying that Lady Gaga sounded bad in this movie, but not in the album. But I think you missed the fact that one of these is a studio album and one of these is a character singing. Not only do I not think she sounds bad at all, ever, in this movie, or just in general, in a movie musical of this nature, acting needs to take precedent over bombastic belting. But again, both of our leads do a great job. My favorite part of this movie, above all else, is in the Once in My Life song, where there's one very distinct voice, louder than all the others in the background, saying, yeah, go Arthur. Yeah, Arthur. Go, Arthur. That's my favorite character.
Go, Arthur. Go, man.
I really love this interpretation of Harley as a rich kid who inserts herself into a story that isn't about her, pretends she faced hardship, lies and manipulates, and ultimately projects herself onto the Joker persona. Sound familiar? So let's talk about interpretation. There are two major points I've heard against this film. There are more, but it's easier to narrow it down to those two. One of which, some dudes just didn't like that this movie is a musical. There are some people out there that legitimately hate movie musicals and want their money back if, by the grace of God, they are tricked into trying something new. Ultimately, this movie exists to please no one. Hardcore Joker fans don't want to see their hero singing and dancing, and musical fans wouldn't be caught dead in a Joker screening. What if it smells? Scratch that. Actually, this movie is made for one person and one person only. Me. And I love it. Is it the best movie ever? No. Frankly, it's not even the best movie I saw this year. It maybe break the top 10. But I love it. warts and all. I truly believe, this is gonna sound dumb, but this is one of those movies that will be remembered fondly years from now. And people will say, well, what were the critics thinking at the time? And I'll be rolling in my grave. I'm gonna be dead in like 6 years, probably. Fingers crossed. I much prefer a cape flick that dares to do something new and fails at it. It doesn't, by the way, than one that never tries anything. If you like movies or musicals or indulge me and you just let me make your opinions for you, watch the movie. Even if you hate it, I think you owe that to yourself. Because I have no problem with people that have seen this movie and hate it. More power to them. What I have a problem with are people who didn't even bother because they tried to lip read Joaquin at the premiere. Okay, where was I? Oh, point number 2. The second thing that people don't like, the final 30 or so minutes of this movie. This is a tough barrier for some to get over. Even some that don't mind that it's a musical or even liked it up until that point. If you're asking me personally, if I had to cut any 30 minutes down, as much as I like the animated opening, I'd cut the first 30. I know it's important to establish our setting, but we don't hear our first song until like 26 minutes in. I think this movie does purposefully try and trick people, but I think it's funny. Maybe this is an intentional choice, and they tried to lull audiences into a false sense of security before belting out at them. But my point still stands. There are 2 points in the ending, so now we're doing subcategories, that I've heard a lot about. Honestly, man, when I was watching the movie first, I agreed. I thought, man, this should have ended minutes ago. And then the actual final ending, it got me. That's why it's called Folie, Deux. That's why we see him and his shadow, and we see the kid in the background the whole movie. Back to interpretation. I never believed that this character, Arthur Fleck, was supposed to be the Joker from the comics. He never quite fit the bill. This movie is about how people around Arthur, whether that be people he knows or not, project themselves onto what they want the Joker to be. And that's what happened with the perception of the first movie. I think it's genius, and I think it's even funnier that a lot of bros got mad that their Joker got bitched out for another new guy. Did I mention I also like Halloween Ends and The Last Jedi? Kind of. They're falling for this movie. You are projecting your hopes and dreams onto Joker. That's what the movie's about. And then the final song is Arthur singing, I want a fine young son, as he's passing the torch, or the torch is being taken onto the next. God, I fucking love this movie. But let's get serious for a moment. Maybe I shouldn't be wearing this makeup. I don't identify with Joker at all. I just thought this was a funny look. But if someone under oath in a court of law told the entire court that people don't think I'm funny, I'd crash out just as hard. I promise I just thought this looked funny. I fear that people will take my Joker rant out of context with the full look and scare the hoes. What's the problem? Scared you might feel something? Anyway, I heard a number of things going into this picture, but the one complaint I heard the loudest, in the frattiest voice ever, I'm picturing in my head. Dude, the Joker gets rocked and then stops being the Joker. Which is the worst possible way to word that, but sure. And then I watched the movie, braced for that to happen. I was mentally preparing myself. And then it didn't happen. At least not how I interpret it. Again, I watched this movie 2 times now. Folie, Deux, if you will. I kept watching the movie, waiting for it to get bad, saying out loud, it can't just be the musical numbers, can it? And then the movie ended, and I said, holy shit, is that why people don't like this movie? Which obviously isn't true. There are some people that like the songs, but just don't like that ending, the final 30-minute sequence. But most of the reviews I read were people upset about the music or that Arthur kept spawning cigarettes out of nowhere. The cigarettes make him crazy. I want to reiterate, I don't think there's such thing as an incorrect interpretation of art. If you saw the scene as an assault, that's fine. I just didn't. But then don't turn around and say I'm wrong. I watched it twice. They take Arthur's clothes off because he's dressed like the Joker. The scene begins with them washing his face paint off first. He's defeated and deflated afterwards, not because a sexual assault took place, but because he realizes that he's just Arthur, and he's powerless. I think a lot of you took Arthur's one-liner and the title of the scene far too seriously. Like, if there was no possible other way, if he was just dressed like Arthur and they did that to him, I would understand the interpretation. And I do still understand the interpretation. I just don't agree with it. But it makes more sense that they stripped the Joker clothes off him and he's defeated because he was using Joker as a shield, projecting his feelings onto it, or rather believing the projected feelings of the people around him, much more Harley than others. But here's the thing. I don't think that this movie contains a rape scene. But even if it did, I don't believe that makes the movie any worse. It's all down to personal preference. Movies have content warnings, and there's a lot of handy websites that will give you trigger warnings for modern movies. If you do not want to see that, or if it greatly upsets you, more power to you. I hope you can continue to live your life without fear or strife. I support you, but don't police me or other people for it. Certainly don't police the director. I feel like we've accidentally slipped into a new form of puritanism. The modern era has found a way to wokely censor artists. And I don't mean this in the sense that like, oh, you can't be offensive anymore. I mean in the sense that you can't talk about anything. I shouldn't have to say this because I certainly hope that we're all adults here. I have made great strides in preventing children from watching my videos and keeping them away from me by poking them with a stick. But portraying unforgivable actions in a piece of art does not make the artist a bad person. I don't even like Has Been Hotel, and I think the way that show handles assault is really inappropriate and shallow. But I do not think the creator of the show is an evil person for portraying compromising scenarios. This rant has really spiraled. I think it's the face paint. It just seeps into my bloodstream. I think a big part of it is the, I guess we'll say, TikTokification of language that has bled over into other platforms. You're not supposed to say words like rape or pedophilia or Nazi, which just infantilizes the issue into true crime bullshit and allows the perpetrators to get off scot-free. So we're all okay with The Boys season 4 making several jokes out of it, but when the Joker movie portrays it, up to your interpretation, by the way, as horrible, it's uncouth. I don't know what did or didn't happen to Todd Phillips in his past, but I believe he has every right to portray these actions in his art. And if it made you feel sickly, that's kind of the point. Again, just to reiterate, if that subject makes you uncomfortable and you don't want to watch it because of that, that is totally understandable. If you didn't like the movie because of that, I stand by you. But don't police artists, and certainly don't scream at me for liking it. This movie is not for everyone, but it certainly is for me. And it might be for you, but you won't know until you give it a try. And I think that's why I reacted so positively to it, or so bombastically and so emotional, aside from just really liking the musical numbers and listening to them over and over, probably more so than Wicked, if I'm being honest. It's the over-the-top vitriol. If I watched this movie in a bubble, like if I went to go see it in theaters without hearing anything, I probably would have given it like a 6 or 7 out of 10. But I got so annoyed with the feedback loop. You should watch this movie, actually. I hope someday it will be celebrated for what it is rather than what it isn't. Because what it is every character in the picture projecting what they believe the Joker to be, because the Joker isn't Arthur. It was never meant to be. They put this character on a pedestal, and they all want it to be different things, and they're all disappointed when it isn't that. And in an ironic sense, that's kind of where the Todd Phillips Joker series is. So if this is the ending, I wouldn't have it any other way. I put on makeup solely for this section, and I filmed for like, I don't know, like an hour. This is going to be a short video. I'm definitely using that for the thumbnail, but now I got to wash all this shit off and talk about a Netflix movie musical.
You are stuck here for eternity. Stuck here in La France.
Ugh. Took forever to get off. Ironically, I feel the exact opposite about this movie. Emilia Pérez is totally and absolutely fine. I didn't know what to expect from this film. All I had heard was that it was a movie musical and it did really well at Cannes. I know it's pronounced Cannes, but I think it's really funny to call it Cannes and imagine they're all eating the dipping sauce while watching movies. I had no clue what it was about, who was in it, or the fact that it was primarily in Spanish. You may think this is an issue for me because I clearly do not speak the language, despite being surrounded by the culture for most of my life, for multiple iterations of my life, and I took it for 2 years. You think I would have learned something, and that I don't really like anime as much as most do, and vehemently refuse the notion that subs are always better than dubs. That's $1 million industry. Maybe you had a point in the 4Kids era, but now it's like a negligible difference. But for me, when it comes to subtitles, This is never applied to movies. Attempting to watch a subtitled anime is like chewing chalk for me, but I mean, I'll watch Godzilla -1 in theaters back to back, 2 showings, why not? Because shows take so much more time. I truly do not understand how someone can binge a show that long. Show some restraint. Anyways, I kind of don't want to tell you anything major about the plot of Emilia Pérez, because I didn't with Wicked. Because the description is something like, oh, it's a story of a lawyer who wants to help people, which sort of. But once I realized where this movie was going, I locked in instantly. It takes a little while to pick up steam, but unlike Joker, we do get a song pretty early to set up the fact that it is, yes, a musical. I think it's way more impactful to experience it yourself. I would say it's easy to watch because it's on Netflix and everybody used to have Netflix. That used to be the streaming service. But nowadays I can't even use my mom's Netflix on my TV, so there are other ways to watch most movies, is all I'll say. It's funny because there are bits in this movie in English that is obviously the language I speak. Not very well, but still. But maybe it's because I don't understand Spanish. But I feel like the English songs are way worse. Like, maybe they're all bad and I just didn't notice. The songs sung in Spanish not only sound more bouncy, but they also have an energy that the English ones just don't. Legitimately, the only songs I don't like in this picture are the ones sang in my native language.
Hey guys, Editor Andrew again. It is a different day, but I'm editing the Emilia Pérez section. And I just wanted to hop in here real quick to say that I was way too kind to this film. I've gotten enough distance now and watched the Golden Globes, and of course we're coming up on the Oscars, that I dislike this movie way more now than I did then. And I don't even know if that's true. I just think within the video, I'm like, okay, I just praised Joker, and I just talked about how illiterate I am and how I'm not very worldly and don't speak a lot of different languages. So I didn't want to like be too angry about, not angry or just vitriolic and be like, this is bad. Because I was worried about how it would be perceived in reference to the things I talked about previous in the video. But now that I've gotten enough distance from it and this video is going to come out soon, I actually think all of it is pretty bad. All right, back to the video.
You may have actually seen one song from this movie shared around Twitter a lot because it's unserious and everyone seems to like it, but I really hate that song. Not because of the subject matter, I'm not offended by it. I think it's fine to portray that in such a way. I just think it sounds bad. I am no Anthony Fantano, although the company does own that flannel. If I dislike a movie or a video game or a TV show, I could write you a whole dissertation. But when it comes to music, I am completely lost. The best I can muster is, yeah, I don't think it sounds good. But what's funny is, while the Spanish musical numbers, specifically the opening one, are much better, I found myself having to rewind multiple times because my eyes were darting back and forth between the choreography and the subtitles at the bottom. It's not a knock at the film, I just thought it was funny. It's honestly a knock at me for being out of my depth. I kept locking in on the dancers and then being like, wait, I don't know what they're saying. Like, again, I have nothing overtly bad to say about this film. It just doesn't do a whole lot to wow me. It's good, but it's not that good. I think it's probably really hard to make a movie that is even a little bit good. And I think everyone involved did a really good job. Except for maybe Selena Gomez. I mean, if we're talking about movie musicals that use popular artists, I don't think she is as popular as the others, but like, she isn't bad here, but she certainly is the worst one. And it's annoying because she seems to be getting all the credit because fans watched her be a kid on the Disney Channel. Wait a minute. Say that again. Disney Channel. What was that first word? Disney. Where have I heard that word before?
I always wanted a brother. I always wanted a brother.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Editor Andrew. I know your favorite, a fictional character. I do not exist. Now, this next section, talking about both Moana 2 and Mufasa: The Lion King, the audio is completely ruined, is totally corrupted. You could hear me, but there's a lot of static, and I sound like an EXE character from a creepypasta. So instead of going back and re-recording all of that, I don't want to do that. So instead what I'm going to do is like that one Breaking Bad meme or the new season of Squid Game, pretty apt comparison. I'm just going to poorly dub over myself. It's either this or AI, and I'd much rather do this.
Andrew, wait a minute. These are 2 movies, you may be saying as you're still angrily typing your Joker comments, to which I say, technically, because I believe these are not two distinct movies. These are each half a movie, equaling one distinct movie. A movie no one wanted to make, and a movie that wasn't even supposed to be a movie. So if you don't know, and maybe you don't, I don't doubt that a lot of you may not have heard, or maybe you have heard, but maybe what you've heard isn't exactly the truth. I don't know what you've heard. If you're in animation circles on the internet, then you may have heard that Moana 2, or this Moana continuation, was supposed to be a Disney Plus show. That is true, and that the show was recobbled and re-edited to turn this show into a feature film. That is not true, because this movie is not literally a re-edited show. Most of the animation done, for the most part, was done when this project was a movie. Was it turned around in extreme conditions? Sure, but this movie was not literally a show. However, the script was retooled after they made the decision to make it a movie. Surely this had something to do with The Rock. I did my part in avoiding the backlash and buying a ticket to Red 1 again, and then sneaking into Moana 2, stealing from The Rock and giving to The Rock. I've seen a lot of people say that while watching the movie, they can tell where the episodes were stitched together. But again, the footage was not for a show. This is not a re-edited show. That being said, to say that this project does not reek of streaming service show would be untrue. The script was retooled, meaning that at the very least a couple important chess pieces were planned for a show, which is why it's very messy. It's why plots are dropped. It's why the secondary characters don't add anything. It's why this movie is constantly starting and stopping. I understand that this is an argument of semantics and isn't actually about the innate quality of the film. I just want to make sure that you know, so nobody get yelled at anymore, this movie was not literally a show. It was planned to be a show, and then it was rewritten. The pacing issues are all writing, none of which are editing. Mufasa: The Lion King, dumb title, has been in development for a hell's length. Basically, after the meteoric success of the Lion King remake in 2019, that was the highest grossing animated movie, to be passed by Inside Out 2. I don't want to keep running in circles, but the reason Disney decided to pivot Moana from a show to a theatrical film was to bolster their 2024 run. But like, come on. I know corporations are greedy. I understand that. But this isn't even about money anymore, or this straight, like, biblical levels of gluttony. The two highest grossing films this year are both Disney products, and you have a musical family film coming out in less than a month. I suppose the writing's on the wall because I can't possibly know how much money Mufasa is going to make, but I just came back from seeing it on opening night, and not even like Friday night, like Thursday night, and there was one other guy there. He sat directly in front of me. Maybe it will do well, but it certainly won't do as well as Moana 2. I saw some feedback on my favorite website, Twitter. How is this movie popular? Why is it doing so well? If everyone is seeing it, how come I never hear people talk about it? Maybe because 8-year-olds don't interact with fandom. They play with blocks and watch Mr. Beast. And Total Drama, evidently. 2 of the top 10 highest grossing films this year are musicals. That's what I'm saying. Production for a sequel to the incredibly lucrative live-action Lion King film began in 2021. Project was given a director in Barry Jenkins, director of multiple award-winning films, one of which, Moonlight, actually won Best Picture over La La Land, if you remember. In the end, no matter what, the musicals got their revenge. I'm kidding, obviously. Moonlight deserved to win. But he's been shackled with this project that was a sinking ship from the start. And at the very last minute, he just had to do interviews where he's like, yeah, they paid me a lot of money to do this. It's not really my thing. And you know what? More power to him. I'll be honest, though. I wasn't expecting much from this movie, but I was expecting it to at least look better than the 2019 film. And I guess it does marginally. I like the use of white, I guess. And I don't mean graphically better. These ugly photoreal designs were doomed from the start. I mean that Barry Jenkins, or as I call him, BJ, is a much better and more active director than Jon Favreau. So I expected it to be shot better, like look cooler, but no, it's shot really blandly. Lacks cinematic language. Like, if I brought it up with Wicked, it's only fair to tell you how awful and ugly Mufasa looked for the most part, most of the time, but at least Wicked had choreography. There's a fake Gladiator musical sketch on SNL not that long ago, and it looks way better than all of these movies. How do we forget how to do this? Also, if you're upset that musicals are grossing the highest, perish. Deadpool gets a dance sequence. I'm counting it. I wish I could say that at the very least I liked this more than Lion King 2019, but at least that had a good script. Mufasa moves really quickly. They do not give any time to breathe on major character decisions. Okay, you're with us now. We are brothers now. Call me Scar forever, I guess. This is gonna sound very bitchy because I'm talking about an animated quotation marks, a film for families, but the dialogue is really juvenile. Andrew, it's a kid's movie. Okay, but Inside Out 2 didn't sound like this. Even fucking Despicable Me 4 didn't sound like this. And that is the worst animated film I've seen this year. That one didn't have Mr. Beast. Like, it doesn't feel like a family film, like a Disney film. It feels like a show on Disney Junior. They converse as if whoever's watching the movie is learning how to talk for the first time. Like, I know it's a children's movie, but it's not for 3-year-olds. There's this one song where the chorus is like, I'm gonna make everything go bye-bye. Like, it reads like that one Garfield show villain song. And that was the other thing I was expecting to at least be passable. The music for Mufasa: The Lion King was done by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And I've defended enough unpopular things this video. I might as well 3 for 3 and talk about Rick and Morty. Might as well shoot for the stars. Lin-Manuel Miranda is an incredibly talented writer. Like, even if you don't fuck with the implications of Hamilton, still wrote a number of songs for Moana and all the songs in Encanto. I love the songs in Encanto, and I'm sure you do too. He isn't quite there yet, but after 3 or 4 more decade-defining Disney films, he will be this era's Alan Menken. Is that crazy to say? I don't think it is. Like, people diminish his work because he's embarrassing or can't sing, whereas I've been following his career for a very long time. This month's Jake and Amir clip quota for the video will be, him making them kiss.
Jake and Amir, does someone say yes and raise the stakes up in here? Now this is the episode you don't want to miss, cause like Sam and Diane, they're finally gonna kiss. Wait, what? They're finally gonna kiss. Like I always dreamed it!
Anyway, that's why I jammed these two movies together, because neither of which have particularly good music. Moana 2 is better, but only by a little bit. The songs in these movies are like below average Phineas and Ferb songs. Like how that show had a song every episode, but you only remember the good ones. The songs are catchy, and nothing about them sounds objectively bad. Except for bye-bye. There's no emotional resonance. The characters aren't singing through their emotions. They're singing, we're on a boat, and we're sailing, or we're walking to my home right now. We're all becoming friends. Like, these are movie musicals. Use the medium to tell your story. At least Moana 2 was cobbled together with music in mind. Mufasa feels like they made a movie, forgot it needed to be a musical, and then cut extra scenes in it not involved with the plot to not take away from the pacing. The only thing a movie musical needs is passable music to make me like it even a little bit. I watched the fucking Playmobil movie. Neither of these films can even do that. Granted, they each do have one song that I like, and it's the villain song, or villain-oriented song. Because that Batgirl in the cave from Moana, it seems like she's going to be a major antagonist, and then that plot is dropped until the post-credit scene. Ooh. Everything about Mufasa seemed fucked up going into it. You're telling me that Mufasa was the first king and made up the rules? Yeah, if I were Scar, I'd be pissed too. I never understood this reboot version of Scar. He is so overtly evil. Why do they keep him around? At least in the animated original, he's like passive-aggressive at best until his betrayal. Now that we know the backstory of Mufasa, you should have fucking killed this guy. I would say that this movie attempts to stand on its own feet, but that is not true. The best parts of both of these movies are little bits made to remind you of the older movie you like. That's why these movies exist at all. It seems like Moana 1 wasn't that long ago, like, oh man, we're already doing the sequel, but it was what, like 2015? What is strange is we're getting a live action remake, I think next year, which is even, that makes the decision to make a theatrical Moana 2 even more strange, because they're already remaking it in live action. It's just incredibly egregious, and Mufasa, also fuck his dad, I guess. Mufasa gets separated from both of his parents. I'm losing my voice as I'm yelling about this. Both of which are alive as far as he knows. But then the whole time he's like, I still remember my mother's face. Like, was his dad an asshole? He seemed like a decent Keith David. He didn't sing once in this movie, by the way. Maybe I should have talked about Has Been. It was a major musical release for 2024. And the show is paced like a very, very, very long movie. Too long, some would say. You know, just because you're a serious adult show for serious adults on Amazon doesn't mean the episodes have to be 22 minutes. But enough about that. Enough about ugly looking photorealistic computer generated effects. It's been a while since we've gotten a proper 2D animated musical. So I had to look back to the past.
So listen, all you singers from here to Beijing, you better crash the box string, get ready to clean.
It's not relevant to this video at all. This movie came out in 2002. But I watched it for the first time for Christmas last month, and I fucking hate it. It's one of the most mean-spirited movies with one of the most unlikable protagonists. I like one part and one song. I mean, I'm easy to please, but damn. But now it is the year 2025, the year I look towards the future. Or rather, my New Year's resolution. The year I look for my origins, the year I bring this whole barn down, the year I achieve fantastic feats, the year I go back on my word, the year I meet the next generation, the year I collaborate, the year I fall from grace, the year I don't have a point, and the year I share my experiences. But as we stand at the end of 2024, I mean, you're seeing this in 2025. Happy Ultra Month, by the way. How could I forget? I do have time to talk about one more musical / comedy film from 2024. So.
I'm fabulous. I'm fabulous.
What the fuck? Why is this here? That's not a musical. Why would it be in the musical / comedy category?